I don't know what to talk about today. I'm looking outside for the viewers at home. I'm in a different part of the studio. You probably noticed that. And I'm actually looking out of the window right now. And guess we can talk about the weather. A little cloudy. Looking toward the ocean over there. Yeah, a little cloudy, maybe some rain. Or if I get up, I can see the traffic. We can talk about the traffic or the dolphins. They're not too far from here. Or we can talk about the world blowing up. How about that? How about we talk about the Middle East on fire? You know, maybe that's something that's relevant for today's conversation. I'm getting emails and reports and everything else coming across that, now national security happens to be an issue that people are concerned about. A poll was just released in both of the major battleground states. You know what a battleground state is? It's where battle takes place for the salvation of Western civilization, ladies and gentlemen. Ohio and Florida, 70% of the people think we need a coherent foreign policy for the Middle East. 70% of Floridians who are going to be voting hope and need and want a coherent, wait a minute, don't we have a president? Didn't he kill bin Laden and save GM? Didn't he do that? Isn't that foreign policy? Give me a break. Okay, welcome to Trento Vision. Today we have one of the world's preeminent experts on Middle Eastern affairs, on national security, on the ideology of the enemy to the West, the enemy to America, the enemy to Israel. We're going to see that gentleman in a little bit. If all the gremlins stay away from our station, we'll see that gentleman zoomed in through electrons and neutrons and microns and everything else right on your screen. A couple of minutes for that conversation. But a couple of segue points from yesterday. And for those of you just joining us, this is Tom Trento, your host of Trento Vision. We got the crew here. We have CJ in the little cubby hole back there, handling all the calls, all that. Alan, Mark, Mike over here, keeping the commie hordes at bay, trying to make everything work. We're at WNN 1470 here in Boca Raton, Florida. We're on 2 to 3 every day, East Coast time. A couple of minutes after the top of the hour right now. The signal, our 50,000-watt radio signal, goes from Miami all the way up to Fort Pierce. That includes West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, North Miami Beach, Hollywood, all these little places. Deerfield Beach, pretty cool place. Visit Jerry's Cigar Shop. Jerry's Cigar Shop. Say that. Jerry's Cigar Shop in Deerfield Beach. Good friend of ours. We may be launching a new show, ladies and gentlemen, in the near future. A one-hour evening show called Cigar Talk, where a few of us just get around, test the best cigars out today, talk about these issues. Live show, have you call in. But that's down the road. Right now, you gotta love the frogs. You gotta love the frogs. You know, they're with us, they're not with us. They're with us, they're not with us. If you have a bucket list, put on your bucket list a trip to Gay Paris, the City of Lights. As insane as those folks are, it is a wonderful place to visit, and the United West has many dear friends there. We have a counter-jihad resistance group that we work with, trying to stop the Islamization of France, of Europe. If you've seen the hordes of Sharia-compliant Muslims just packing out the streets, the boulevards in Paris on Juma prayer on Friday, either some of us or some of our friends have shot that footage covertly or overtly, as the case may be, to bring the issue to the world. But today, the French have done something very interesting. They have doubled down, or switching the metaphor, they've upped the ante in this, well, if we go to chess, they made a wonderful attack move in this global chess game. There's a magazine in Paris called Charlie Hebdo. Great magazine. It's like our National Lampoon. And every once in a while, they constantly strike at Americans and religions and all of this. And Nobody does anything. A couple of times they struck out at Islam, and they had their building burned down. About a year ago, their building got burned down when they were going to do something about the Prophet. Well, they got pissed, I guess, Charlie Hebdo. Today in Paris, France, they released a magazine with explicit, dirty, vile pictures of Muhammad the Prophet. What did I just say? Yes, Charlie Hebdo, Hebdo, a satirical magazine in Paris, purposely had cartoons drawn, and they were going after Muhammad the Prophet. They had other cartoons where they went after Jewish rabbis. And they basically said, we're going to put all of this stuff out there. We're going to see who the crazy people are in the world who attack each other and attack others because of a cartoon. Let's see if the Jews start attacking people because we mock them. Or let's see if the Muslims start attacking people if we mock them. And officials in Paris for the past 2 days, no, you can't do it. And the Charlie Hebdo people said, guess what? We're going forward with this. And they went forward with it, and the magazine is on newsstands. And the country of France has closed 20 embassies around the world. For fear of retribution, France has closed 20 embassies, and everybody is on high alert in Paris. But ironically, kiddies, the Islamic leaders around the world are calling for the Muslims not to take the bait. Don't take that Western bait and let them see that we want to attack others. Don't fall for this. Somehow, the Muslims are controlling themselves today over explicit, dirty, nasty pictures by design to provoke Muslims. What an insane ideology. I mean, what an incoherent belief system. And we're going to talk about that in detail. And anyway, our hats off to the First Amendment people in France, even though they don't have a First Amendment, but they do value free speech and free cigarettes and everything else for free. And they have pretty good wine. So, it doesn't take much to see that we have some serious problems going on. And the best way here at Trento Vision, we like to address those problems, is to bring on our friends, experts, even if they're not our friends. But this particular person is indeed our friend. And we're going to have just a living room chat between one of America's foremost authorities on some of these issues, many of these issues, and myself. And we'll take calls today. You can call in at 888-565-1470, but not yet. Maybe a little later in the show. I'll tell you when you can call. We want to lay groundwork, and then we have another guest coming on in a little bit to complement this imminent guest. So call your friends. This is going to be a fascinating bit of time here. You know what? I can't see that because of the glare. If you can just maybe put it on top of here. Right there. Be perfect. Perfect. Okay. Our first guest is coming from a bunker in the mountains of Tora Bora. And he's not giving up, folks. He's hanging there until... Actually, our next guest... knows quite a bit about Tora Bora and a few other things. And why don't I just bring him on, and we'll introduce Mr. Gary Berntsen. Gary, are you there? Hello, how are you? Good. Oh.
Not very nice to speak to you today.
Absolutely. How's the bunker at Tora Bora these days?
Well, I think things are busy there at Tora Bora. I'm not there right now, of course. I'm calling you from Tampa, which is not far from SOCOM, the people that spend a lot of time fighting there.
Okay, well, we're trying to sort out the audio from where you are, but it looks like it's okay now, is it?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. All right, Gary, let's do this. You got a little bit of time to hang with us here.
Sure.
And I want to go through this. We have no commercials here at Trento Vision. And our goal is to educate Americans so that they understand these national security issues, and in particular, so they can vote intelligently on November 6th. And our audience, Gary, is a pretty big audience. The signal covers 4 or 5 million people. I think everyone is listening today because they knew you were coming, Gary. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes you tick? Give us your background. What makes you tick? Then we'll get into the issues.
Of course, I'm currently serving a role in the state of Florida as the chairman of Concerned Veterans for America. But my background, my historical background, is I'm a retired former senior CIA officer. I am the author of the book Jawbreaker, which was about the invasion of Afghanistan. I was CIA's team lead in 2001. After the 9/11 attacks, I led CIA forces into Afghanistan. I'm the one that was on hand when we seized Kabul. I was the architect of the Battle of Tora Bora, sending my team, one of my sub-teams, in there. And, bin Laden and about 1,000 militants went in, and we killed about 700 of them. About 300 survived that battle, escaping across to Pakistan. About half of them were captured and sent to Gitmo. Bin Laden was in that group of half that got away. Prior to that, I spent in CIA time as a CIA chief of station, which is the most senior position abroad in 3 different countries, and was chief of Hezbollah operations in CIA for 3 years, which means I ran a global program against Hezbollah globally. And that was in the late 1990s, before Al Qaeda became the big player. So Hezbollah was the largest threat that faced us at that point, and I was the lead for that in CIA. So I've spent many years working these targets. I speak Farsi, Persian. Worked Iranian operations for many years, so I know Iran quite well, know Hezbollah well. Spent a lot of time on the ground in Afghanistan. I retired from CIA in 2006, and since then I've spent another 3.5 years on the ground. And a year out there with the United States Army as an advisor on improvised explosive devices, working out in RC East, out in Jalalabad, and have spent time with corporations, major U.S. companies, helping them get it set up out there in support of DoD's mission. I have a son who just finished his second tour in combat. He's a captain with the 82nd Airborne. He just finished his second tour as a captain down in Canada. I have a daughter who is a U.S. naval officer. She was on the USS Stennis and is now a U.S. Foreign Service officer. So she's out in the Middle East, in a country where there are threats, and so I'm getting sort of a first-hand look at what it looks like on the ground out there, as well as you've got thousands and thousands of demonstrators in some of these countries going up against our embassies.
So you have had little experience in any of these matters whatsoever. You really don't have no idea what you're talking about. Is that what you're trying to tell us, Gary?
Yeah, no, it's just a guess.
Gary's just guessing at this
I've
stuff.
also written 3 books. I wrote, of course, Jawbreaker. Then I wrote a novel called The Walk-In, which was about the Iranian Quds Force. And then I finally finished with a policy book called Human Intelligence, Counterterrorism, and National Leadership. So I think I've thought a bit about what national leaders should be doing on this subject.
Well, this is Tom again. That was Mark before. I read Jawbreaker when it came out, and I hadn't met you yet. And a fascinating book. You write very well also. And then not too long ago, you gifted me a copy of The Walk-In, and a little Tom Clancy stuff there going on, Gary. Not bad. Pretty good book. I haven't seen number 3 yet. Is it published yet? Is it done yet?
Although the policy book is out, yes.
Okay, you'll have to gift me a copy.
I will gift you a copy.
And we'll review it here at Trento Vision, okay?
Yeah.
So, and when you include good bottles of Italian wine, we read it first above the other books that are in line.
Yes.
You may be hearing something, folks. The daily. We're thinking.
I can feedback. Also.
Yeah, we're thinking, what the heck's going on with the audio? And our spacious studios are located on top of the railroad track, So the train is coming right underneath us now. I don't know if you hear it, Gare, but there's a freight train. How's that segue? Freight train going through the Middle East right now.
Yes, there is.
And you and I are gonna. They don't let us smoke cigars in our studio here. Does your wife let you smoke cigars in your house?
I smoke them out back.
Okay. Well, yeah, we're hanging out. We're going to smoke some cigars and talk about these issues. I'm going to show you a couple of clips from today's news. And the way to kick this off, obviously, is last week, September 11th, the events that took place at our embassies. And everyone's pointing to this movie in California, this trailer. A little background, Gary. We at the United West knew 1 or 2 of the folks that had either an arm's length knowledge of it, or one guy that I knew somewhat, not a good friend. I had met him a couple of times. Is the consultant with this, and he never mentioned anything about it. They kept it under wraps, but and in fact, he's got death threats. A few of the other folks in Southern California have death threats. Anybody associated with this tape, this video, is getting sort of death threats. And, you know, we just want to go on record that some of the folks we've spoken about, good friends of ours like Noni Darwish, who is a convert from Islam to Christianity. There was some confusion whether or not she was involved in this, and she had nothing to do with this film. She knew nothing about it. In one of the interviews on our show here, somebody brought up her name, just referencing some of her work in the past, and it was misunderstood to be associated to the movie. So we're going on record today clarifying the fact that Noni's had nothing to do with this movie, doesn't know anything about it, and so that's just one issue. She has enough problems from folks that don't like her to be associated with this movie. But the first thing, I'm going to show you a little piece here, a short piece, about 30 seconds from the news this morning from Fox. Take a look at this, Gary, and it's dealing with our good friends, the Paks, the Pakistanis. Watch this.
All right, let's get it going. Kick it off here on a Fox News alert on growing anti-American demonstrations happening around the world. Here is one of them. All right, that is the scene in Islamabad, Pakistan. Hundreds of lawyers, believe it or not, forcing their way into an area that houses the U.S. Embassy and other foreign missions, shouting anti-U.S. slogans, burning the American flag, briefly getting into an area before police managed to push them back. That's where we start. A few more hot spots to get to. I'm Bill Hemmer, and welcome here, and on we go again. Huh?
Yeah, very.
Gary, you hear all the time that the jihadis, the poor, indigent, dumb Muslims are the ones causing trouble. Did you catch who these individuals were?
Yes, of course. They were lawyers. I think you have to. I think that there's a false notion by many in the United States that terrorism is something that is, that people who are poor are driven to it. If you look at some of the leading terrorist organizations in the world and in South Asia, like the Lashkar-e-Taiba, they focus on university graduates. They're looking for engineers, and I think that you'd find that more of those who are leading members of terrorist organizations are highly educated, engineering or in math. They see the world in black and white totally, and have decided to make unrelenting war on the U.S. So your point is well stated there. These were lawyers. These are purportedly people who one would otherwise think would know better, but they don't know better. And this goes back to a larger issue here, and it goes back 10 years, 15 years to Samuel Huntington, his discussion of a clash of civilizations. And we are seeing that there are many, many people in this part of the world that view the United States in very hostile terms, despite the fact that we have done so much for so many of the Islamic faith that it is disgraceful, their behavior.
Well, let me ask you in particular. I got 4 or 5 pieces we're going to go through. In particular, the Pakistanis. Have you had any direct dealing with them, or just?
Oh, yes, I've had significant experience dealing with Pakistan and terrorism.
Okay,
Pakistan is a nation of 170 million people. It has 24 militant groups operating along its border. The problem in Pakistan, the great problem in Pakistan, was that immediately during the Soviet Jihad period, starting in about 1979, 1980, that the United States funneled a lot of money into that country. And what was happening at that time is you had a president by the name of Zia al-Haq. And what Zia did to Pakistan at that time, certain policies that he undertook, changed that country fundamentally. And the way it was changed fundamentally was that if you looked at the United States or the U.S. Armed Forces, for instance, when people are majors or lieutenant colonels, they go off to training, and they'll go off to Command and General Staff College to get a professional training. And the Pakistani military up to that point was a very British-styled institution. Well, what Zia al-Haq did was he allowed officers, instead of going to Command and General Staff at mid-career, to go off and join Islamic organizations and travel around with them for a year and preach. And so what you had was an entire class of military officers then were Islamicized with the worst people in that country. And this is how their relationships with groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba, Lashkar-e-Jhangvi, all of the the Kashmiri groups like Harakat al-Ansar, the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, a class of military officers, a generation of them, were put belly to belly with front organizations for insurgents, became affiliated with insurgents, and not only did they, fund their operations, they fell in love with them. And so Pakistan has changed fundamentally in the 1980s by Zia al-Haq. Now, the United States, many people and many of your listeners, have seen the movie Charlie Wilson's War.
Right.
And you have, Charlie Wilson there talking in a scene there with Zia al-Haq and two Pakistani officers about their needs for the fight against the jihad, against the Soviets in Afghanistan. What you don't know there is that Zia al-Haq was probably funneling off 1/3 of those funds to Kashmiri militant groups that were fighting against India. And India, the largest, democracy in the world, was screaming bloody murder at the Americans, saying, "You're funding the Pakistanis, they're funding terrorist organizations against us, and they're killing thousands of people in Kashmir," which they were doing. Only after 9/11 did Musharraf, he was forced, A, to cooperate with the United States fully to fight the jihadists in Afghanistan. And then in 2002, he gave the order that they would no longer, that the Pakistani armed forces would no longer, work with Kashmiri militant groups to do, jihad inside of Kashmir. That is what forced a lot of Kashmiri militants to try to kill Musharraf, and also turned a lot of his army officers against him and participated in attempted assassinations of him. Pakistan is a very complicated place. It's a very violent place. You got 170 million people. You have 2 million young men in madrasas in that country. There's fertile ground for them to be recruited into militant organizations. After you finish, service in studies in a madrasa for 3 or 4 years, you're good for one of two things. You can either become a mullah or you become a jihadist. What else is there?
Yeah, and for our listening and viewing audience, a madrasa is a Islamic school. Gary, take about a minute because I want to move on to some other countries in the Middle East. But tell our listeners and viewers how the ISI fits into this, and how many nice little toys does Pakistan now have in their arsenal?
The ISI is the Inter-Services Intelligence Directorate. In the intel world, we call it ISID. But the ISI, as it's known publicly, is the intelligence service that, even though Musharraf gave that order for the Pakistanis in 2002 not to cooperate with militant organizations, they have continued to work with groups like the Haqqani Network. And so you have a government in Pakistan that has politicians in power, but the government has been dominated by the military for almost 40 years. And they frequently will conduct political activities and, activities, consistent with covert action activities, along with militant organizations. And it's its own government to itself at times. This is a gigantic problem. About a week ago, for the very first time, the U.S. government finally identified the Haqqani Network as a terrorist organization. That's a problem for Pakistan because the Pakistanis are affiliated to them, have provided them guidance. It's pretty ugly. We've known they've done that. So Pakistan itself, the ISI, the ISI is been working against U.S. interests for years. And I think the final thing I'll state is on his last day in office, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mike Mullen, said that the ISI had actually worked hand in glove with the Haqqani Network on the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Kabul a year ago.
Wow.
This is a purported ally of ours that we have been giving billions of dollars of aid. What a disgrace.
I forgot, what country was Osama bin Laden hiding in?
Oh, of course.
Okay. How many thermal...
He's right next to it. He's butted up against a Pakistani military facility, school, but over on the Kashmir side, which got him away from the Afghan-Pak border because they knew if he was close enough that the Americans would just cross over and snatch him. But he was deep enough inside that it was going to require a certain amount of political risk to go get him, which we finally did.
Finally, yeah. How many, as of last count, how many thermonuclear toys does Pakistan own at this moment?
Approximately 90.
90. And if I'm not mistaken, A.Q. Khan, the father of the Islamic bomb, is a Paki, and he's the one who dribbled this stuff out across the globe to all the evil people, correct?
Yeah, A.Q. Khan learned his skills actually in the Netherlands, where he learned about the technique of the cascade system of manufacturing the type of uranium, the highly enriched uranium. He brought that to Pakistan and did that for Ali Bhutto, Benazir Bhutto's father, who was later assassinated by, and actually was hung by Zia al-Haq. But then A.Q. Khan was the guy that opened up the international bazaar, was selling this technology to the Libyans, and the processes being used right now in Iran, the cascade system, was surely learned from A.Q. Khan. He probably provided the needed training to the Iranians.
Okay, great. I'm going to show the viewers and the listeners can hear this, another piece of news clip. We seem to have lost Gary's signal.
I got it.
Can we have him hang up and come back? Or
No, that's
we're
fine.
Good?
Fine.
Okay. Gary, take a look at this. This is also from this morning's news. Instead of Pakistan now, we're going over to Jerusalem, to the east side of Jerusalem, and there's a short little piece I want you to take a look at and comment on. Here we go.
These days, I'm Martha McCallum, so we've also got violent demonstrations breaking out in East Jerusalem to show you. Angry mobs chanting, "We will all sacrifice ourselves for the Prophet Muhammad." Hundreds of people there hurling rocks and fireworks, all of that aimed at Israeli security forces.
Well,
Yeah, were you able to see that, Gary?
I didn't see it, but I could hear it, and it's no surprise to me at all. Of course, the Palestinians, who we have spent billions of dollars in trying to assist them with their development, with American political power has been put on the line to assist them. Financial assistance and help their political institutions. It's just ridiculous. The U.S.'s handling of this has been naive at best.
A little crazy. Have you ever, in your work in the CIA, how many years did you spend in the agency?
I spent almost 24 years in CIA.
Did you
I was the chief of Hezbollah operations globally, so I have significant knowledge of Hezbollah's operations, their battle with the Israelis, and tangentially, Hamas's operations and others there.
Well, what we'll do in the future, we want to bring you back for a complete hour on Hezbollah for sure, because these guys, I think, are going to be acting up in the near future in the northern part of, southern part of Lebanon, northern part of Israel. But did you ever run across Ambassador Ryan Crocker in your travels?
Yes, I do know Ryan Crocker.
Well, let me play this clip right here, and then I'll have you comment on it. If we can roll Ryan Crocker.
Egypt now, we're learning a prosecutor in that country has issued an arrest warrant for several people here in the U.S. with ties to that film that some believe started all this. This is a former U.S. ambassador in Iraq and Afghanistan, warns that what we're seeing today might only be the tip of the iceberg.
At the beginning of the Arab awakening, when the TV lights went off in Tahrir Square, after Mubarak stepped down, like usual, we said, end of story, end of autocracies, end of problem, it's a wonderful new world out there. Well, not exactly.
Were you able to get that, Gary?
Yes, I was. I've met Mr. Ambassador Crocker on many occasions. Actually, I was with him, spoke to him at the Marine Corps Ball in Kabul last year. We were there together, and he was with General Allen, and the two of them spoke. But he and I met when he was in Kuwait in the late 1990s as U.S. ambassador. I was the chief of Hezbollah because Hezbollah was running operations in Kuwait, so we became acquainted in that time during my many visits to Kuwait. And he is a highly respected diplomat, very skillful guy. He was actually the man after 2001, after I finished the fight in the initial opener for Afghanistan. He went out and opened up the embassy in Kabul in 2001, and then, of course, a decade later returns as its ambassador, and was a fairly capable man, very capable man in the last year out in Afghanistan. I think he did a good job, and there were some strained relations between the State Department and the military, and I think he did a good job of fixing a lot of that last year. But Crocker's statement that, this is not, the story isn't over, that we're going to have nothing but goodness and light after Mubarak leaves. This is Pandora's box that has been opened. People are calling this in America the Arab Spring. I call it the Islamic Spring. And Islamic fundamentalists have done everything possible to leverage themselves into positions of political power. Their objectives are to operate against U.S. interests and to try to eject the United States from the Middle East, or from and to do damage to those in the Middle East that are our allies. Look, the United States needs allies around the world, and that means in the Islamic world as well. There are a lot of people out there that want to work with us, that believe that the form of government we have is probably the path forward on the planet, is the best way to ensure prosperity and a good lifestyle. But those, those Islamic fundamentalists are against us and them, and are conducting warfare on both of us. And in places like Afghanistan, if the United States leaves precipitously and doesn't have enough, infrastructure left on the ground, you could very easily see a war against those that work closely with us and have them all eliminated pretty quickly.
Yeah, and what is really dramatic is the next clip we're going to show you, a country that just a year ago kept caged these individuals that are tearing it apart right now and want to tear others apart. But we here at the United West and others who work with us, Clare Lopez and Gaffney and all these folks, said this Muslim Brotherhood's a bad deal. Take a look at this, Gary. And after you look at this short piece, I've booked a trip. You're going to come with all of us. We're going to go spend 2 weeks in beautiful downtown Cairo. We're going on a little vacation to see the pyramids. How about that?
That sounds fine.
All right.
Leland Vittert now leads our coverage. He's streaming live again today in Cairo. What's all this business about arrest warrants issued by the Egyptian government, Leland?
Bill, this really shows just how much influence the Islamists, the very hardline jihadists, have here in Egypt, in the sense that now the courts here, the general prosecutor has kowtowed to their demands that these people behind the film be punished. Obviously, this is symbolic. The Egyptian arrest warrants don't have any meaning in the United States. This all stems from last Tuesday here near the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, where these protests all began when they marched down towards the embassy, ripped down the American flag to protest this movie. And now the Egyptian court says they want to arrest the 7 Coptic Christians and 1 U.S. pastor who are allegedly behind this film. It's pretty interesting because I sat down with one of the organizers of this protest a couple of days ago, a man with very strong ties to Al-Qaeda, and he told me that he wants the people behind this film tried by Sharia law. And if under Sharia law you are convicted of insulting the Prophet Muhammad and don't repent, you are executed. And the move here by the Egyptian court show just how much Egypt's changed in these 18 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, your thoughts, Clare?
Well, of course, let's turn the world on its head here. The demonstrators are free to do whatever they want, but those who are exercising a freedom of speech in another part of the world are to be tried. It's a bit of insanity.
Listen, we have next week President Morsi, who's a Muslim brother, who actually became a Muslim brother. He joined the Muslim Student Union at USC in 1978, USC being the USC in California, University of Southern California. He's coming here. This is a guy that allowed his attorney general to issue an arrest warrant for U.S. citizens. And he's coming to the UN in the General Assembly. Then he's having a little soiree with our president, a little dine and dance at the White House. What the heck is that all about?
Yeah, well, the thing is this is all part of the current administration's, hope, change, and chaos policy in the Middle East. They really do not understand what the forces that they've unleashed. The fact that the United States would be apologizing. We do not need to be apologizing to anyone in the Middle East. The United States has been a force for good in the world. We should be unapologetic of this. We liberated 100 million Muslims in Central Asia from under the yoke of communism. We saved people in Bosnia-Herzegovina. We saved people in Kosovo. We saved the Kuwaitis from Saddam Hussein's violence in '91. We liberated a population that was being brutalized by the Taliban. I mean, give me a break. There is nothing that we should be apologizing for. We provided more aid to the Islamic world than any other group in the world. Israel may get the largest chunk of foreign aid, but when you combine all the dollars we've spent in the Islamic world, it farly outnumbers what we've given to the Israelis.
Hey, I have a point's well taken, but I have a special guest that just called in, who wants to ask you a specific question regarding Ambassador Chris Stevens, that whole situation. Do we have our guest with us? Is she there? Hello, Clare? Yeah, I'm waiting to see if we can pull up Clare Lopez. You may know her, Gary.
Yes.
Clare, can you hear me? It's Tom Trento. Can't hear it. Nope, can't get it.
Want to relay the question?
Yeah, if I'll get the question. Well, let me see. We have her picture. We don't have her voice, but I'll relay the question as we're trying to get Clare. She wants to know now that it's looking like, as the intelligence is coming in, Gary. And by the way, Clare Lopez, for the viewing and listening audience, and this is Tom Trento, Trento Vision. We're broadcasting on the radio, WNN 1470 out of Boca Raton, and on the internet TV, TrentoVision.tv. It's 40 minutes past the hour, and we have another special guest on the phone, Clare Lopez. She is a retired CIA operations officer, spent 20 years. You guys were at the agency at the same time, and you're both good friends of ours. Claire is one of the co-authors of Sharia, The Threat to America. She's the editor of that book. And while we're trying to get her actual voice, because she is a real person, she wants to know, Gary Berntsen, if it's looking more and more that Ambassador Chris Stevens may have been targeted not for assassination necessarily, but to be kidnapped in an exchange for Omar Abdul Rahman, the blind sheikh. Do you know anything about that possibility?
I have not heard that, but the point here is that when Morsi came to power in Egypt, the first thing he did, one of his early speeches, is stated that he was seeking the release of Abdul Rahman, the blind sheikh. So this would be definitely a goal of individuals in North Africa. Look, the issue here was, the administration, the current administration, and the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Susan Rice, made some ridiculous statements stating that, well, this was not a planned, attack on the embassy, that it happened spontaneously. Well, you don't have people show up, 200 fighters with weapons, heavy weapons, show up there to attack a facility, spontaneously. This was clearly an organized effort. The fact that it took place on 11 September was no coincidence. This was a planned effort. Did they want to take him alive? I have not heard that, but that would not surprise me if that had been their intention.
Well, I have Claire with us now. I'm going to bring her in a minute. But the other day, both of you guys, Claire and Gary, I was watching, I think, ABC News in the evening, and Richard Engel was reporting from Tahrir Square. And I see a billboard behind him that had Omar Abdul Rahman, the blind sheikh's picture on it. I took a freeze frame and I sent it to some of our colleagues, Andy McCarthy in particular, telling him the Sheikh it says hello. But there was an advertisement in the middle of Tahrir Square calling for the release. Claire, are you there with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, we got you beautifully. Claire, your friend Gary, feel free to ask him whatever you want.
Hey, Gary, hi. Just real quickly, that poster of the blind sheikh in the middle of Tahrir Square is actually part of a permanent encampment. It is the demonstrator group of Gamma Islamiyah, the blind sheikh's group, which has been permanently encamped outside the Cairo embassy since last year's revolution there. So when we talk about the idea that the blind sheikh might be, under discussion for release or, transferal to quote-unquote Egyptian custody, this is one of the reasons that makes people talk about it. But there are two more reasons, and I'll ask you what you think about them. One is that not only, as you said precisely, did Mohammed Morsi talk about prioritizing the release of the blind sheikh during his campaign, and others of the Muslim Brotherhood did too during that presidential campaign. But he also repeated it in his inauguration acceptance speech in Tahrir Square when the elections were over. But then secondly, something that maybe the listeners have heard about or maybe not, but in June of this year, June 2012, the White House must have broken protocol, signed a special waiver of some sort, because they gave a visa and agreed to meet with a top Gamma Islamiyah official by the name of Hani Noor Eldin, top Gamma Islamiyah terrorist organization, foreign terrorist organizations list. They gave him a visa, brought him to Washington, D.C., and received him in the White House by the National Security Council precisely to discuss his request, group's request, that the blind sheikh be released. There's no reason to go to that extent of providing material support to a terrorist organization if you were already decided that his request had no merit and you were going to turn it down. And then the last thing that I would mention is that outside of at the Benghazi consulate, the attack, just as you said, Gary, I mean, they came at it with RPGs and machine gun fire. It was coordinated very well. It was very well pre-planned. Somebody needs to be out in the desert looking for the encampment, the training camp where they prepared the mock-up of the American consulate in Benghazi and also the safe house site where these guys trained, because they trained for this. But the thing is that they assassinated the security, very light, small security squad, including 2 Marines, and I believe the PAO was with them. The ambassador was not assassinated. He died inside the building of reportedly smoke inhalation. But what if that was a kidnap operation? What if the intent was not to kill him, but rather to capture him as a bargaining chip for the trade of the blind sheikh? And if that could be the case, then why isn't the State Department, the United States government, being honest about it? Why aren't they warning the rest of our federal foreign service officers and others serving abroad that they need to be aware there are jihadis out there? By the way, the brigade that attacked Benghazi is called the Imprisoned Omar Abdul Rahman Brigade.
Wow.
That's the name of the brigades that attacked the consulate. They're still out there, the Brotherhood, Al-Qaeda, looking for a hostage to take, or hostages,
this stuff
to be bargaining chips. Comments? I just wanted to ask you what you thought about that.
This administration is in campaign mode more than anything else. And I think that the story that was provided on the death of the ambassador, how he was found, I read accounts, and it may have been Newsweek or one of the other American magazines, where he was found, he was still alive, they transferred to a hospital, all a fairy tale. It was the ambassador, and it's out in the press now. It's in the Lebanese press and the French press, sadly, that this ambassador was abused by his captors. And
you mean raped, Gary, right?
Very likely. That is what the French and the Lebanese media are reporting, as was Gaddafi when he was captured. It is a heartbreaking story on this, but the current administration doesn't want anyone to even think about that. They don't want it mentioned because it doesn't play well to their narrative, and it doesn't play well to the fact that from the American media reporting that the president was initially briefed on what was going on. They didn't know where their ambassador was, and he went to bed. That is, the American president went to bed.
Wait.
Very glad that
Gary.
President Obama's well rested.
Wait a minute. Who went to bed while this was going on?
The president of the United States.
How nice. Okay.
That is what has been. Now you put these things together, but he was briefed and he went to bed, and then when he got up, it was all over, and this is what I've read in the media, but the French, I think it's AFP, have come out. Agency of France Presse has come out and quoting Lebanese sources, Lebanese magazines, reputable ones. There are translations that you can do on the Arabic press, with Google to get accurate wording on that of what occurred. But the story that's been told in the U.S. press is really a fantasy, and they don't want people to know what happened. It's a tragedy what happened to our ambassador.
Claire,
let
me ask you this. I know you have to go here. You're, I think, in between classes or whatever, but before you leave, share with our viewers and our listeners, and the viewers can see, we have your graphics up and your picture and all of that, Claire. Clare Lopez, for the radio side of our audience. Claire is a retired CIA operations officer, works now with the Center for Security Policy. She's a fellow there. She's a fellow with the Clarion Fund. She's doing all kinds of great stuff. We'll have her on as a special guest in the future. But in a succinct way, Claire, for our driving and viewing audience, how should Americans understand the role that this movie, Innocence of Muslims, and there is a movie. We have interviewed several of the people that are involved with, or have been involved in some capacity, and there apparently is one real movie that somebody, that Sam Basile guy or somebody has somewhere, but no one's ever seen it. But that 14-minute trailer is out on the internet. How should Americans view that as it relates to all the upheaval in the Middle East?
Well, what I would say is that this whole thing is being played out on different levels. And what happened at the Benghazi consulate and to Ambassador Stevens is one level. The battle for the release of the blind sheikh, that's one level. This horrid little film is on another level, and it's being used as an excuse by the U.S. administration for why all of the different attacks around the world have taken place against American installations, not just in Benghazi and Cairo, but all the other capitals and cities around the world where outraged Muslim mobs, who themselves, of course, have never seen the film, have attacked our facilities and our personnel. I've also seen only the 14-minute little trailer of the movie. Believe me, it is unbelievably awful. It is horribly produced. It's extremely amateurish, but I cannot see anything in it that is actually false. What it is a depiction of the life of the Muslim prophet Muhammad, and some of the activities that he is reported in Muslim history, in Islamic history, and his own biographies to have engaged in. Including attacks, including rapes, including other behavior that we would find reprehensible. So the film is being used by the Obama administration as the entire reason why these attacks have taken place around the world. And of course, it is completely false that is so. But more importantly, and this is the part for the listeners, there is a campaign by the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the OIC. That is all the Muslim countries of the world together in one organization. Their plan, their published plan on their website, everywhere else in public, is to achieve the criminalization of the criticism of Islam. That's their stated goal. Their Secretary General is a Turk by the name of Ekmeladin Ihsanoglu. He was invited to the White House, to the State Department, to Washington, D.C. last December, and has been involved in a process of more than a year with our Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, to work on how the United States can come into compliance with Islamic law on slander, which means you may not insult Islam. Now, American law right now, we have a First Amendment.
Yeah, Claire. Let me do this. It looks like we're taking the Trento Vision team to the United Nations and to D.C. next week to do a complete week on that. So I'm glad you introduced it. I don't want to go too deeply into it. I want to explore it next week. So thank you very, very much, Clare Lopez, our good friend, for being with us. Gary, we have a few minutes left. And obviously, we will have you back regularly for updates on this.
Sure.
You want to tell us a little bit about your work with Concerned Veterans for America?
Yes, I'm the state director for a group called concernedveteransforamerica.org. You're going to go to our website. We're an advocacy group for veterans in the United States. We're concerned about the economy. We're concerned about the economics of national security. We all know that $16 trillion of debt is not sustainable. We do not want to see the budget balanced on the back of veterans or on national security. We want to see sensible policies pursued by our government, which are not occurring. We have a current administration that is been so irresponsible economically that it's hard to explain. It's just one would believe that they're trying to bankrupt us. We've had deficits of budget deficits yearly of 1.5, 1.4, 1.3 trillion the last few years. President Obama has spent more in 3 years than President Bush spent in 8 in terms of accumulating the deficit. We've got to stop these things. We are very concerned about issues like Iran. We could spend an entire hour just on Iran, which presents a clear and present danger to the world. And we don't believe that this administration is handling that issue well at all. They fail to understand the basic premise that Iran is pursuing a weapons program, bar none. Nothing will stop them except the destruction of that program. Excuses that where we put the red line, when we move. The fact of the matter is if you were to buy a chicken today, Tom, in Iran, it would cost you $60 U.S. dollars to change into tomans than to purchase a chicken to eat for you and your family. They are suffering horribly under those sanctions, but they suffered worse during the Iran-Iraq war, and the Iranian government is determined to get a nuclear weapon which they believe will give them first world status.
All right, we will absolutely pursue that because we are staying right on the Iranian-Israeli issue. And we've had callers call in today, Gary, one of whom was a retired disabled veteran, and he wanted to speak with you about some of the views of folks, I think, in the administration who view veterans' benefits as, as the dole, right? But you commented quite a bit, and we can't get to our callers today. I wanted to lay the groundwork with you, and then Claire called in. We wanted to get her on. So thank you very, very much, Gary Berntsen, for being with us on Trento Vision today on the 19th. Beautiful day in South Florida. Hey, when you're down in the Miami area, I know you work with some of the folks down there, Gary. Stop in the studios. We'll have you in studio, and we'll do a show together and educate Americans on national security and these issues so that everybody can vote intelligently. You know what that means, ladies and gentlemen, voting intelligently. Say goodbye, everybody, to Gary Berntsen. We appreciate you being with us, Gary. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, good job. Let me tell you, man, Gary, and we will let our listening and viewing audience experience Mr. Berntsen in the future. He is a warrior among warriors. He understands the threat doctrine of the enemy, whether it's Islamic Jihad or communism or fascism or whatever. He's a combat veteran. He's a trigger puller, but he's an intel guy, and he's just a great guy. Plus,
he's just a first-class guy.
He's a first-class guy, and he is a walking encyclopedia of names and locations and events and all of that. So we will expose you to him. And Clare Lopez also probably one of the brightest people we've ever worked
Exactly.
with. And we've done operations with Clare. We've gone into places with Clare. So, but here today, we hope you enjoyed a little look into the Central Intelligence Agency, or Clowns in Action.
Spy versus spy today.
Spy versus spy. Gary and Clare, and Tom Trento, your host. See you tomorrow, folks, where we have another wild and wacky day planned. Signing off.